You're listening to Opera Box Score.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Wherever you are, however you're listening, it's America's talk radio show about opera. It's Opera Box Score. I'm Oliver Camacho, joined by Matt Cummings. All right, this week, Pene Pati takes a free throw on Rodolfo, the role which marks the star Samoan tenor's debut at Lyric Opera Chicago next month. As Rodolfo and Mimi are top two on the call sheet for La Boheme, we'll handicap some of the commercial recordings of Puccini's perennial people-pleasing masterpiece. And then, Meridian Prall goes Inside the Huddle. Named an OBS Artist to Watch in 2025, we're going to check in with the American mezzo-soprano in advance of her debut in Washington Concert Opera's La Clemenza di Tito. Plus, in the 2-minute drill, speaking of Washington, well, we'd rather not, but at least we can talk about the new Met season, if America is still a thing in the fall. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast on Spotify. Click follow on Apple Podcasts. Hit the plus sign. Email us your hot takes by writing to mailbag@operaboxscore.com or upload a voice memo using the You Got Something to Say tab on our website, operaboxscore.com. However you contribute, you'll get an OBS beer coaster, an OBS lapel pin, and a #1 OBS fan foam finger, just for sharing your own hot take. Without further ado, welcome to the show, Matt Cummings.
Thanks so much, OC. I'm not sure that I've ever heard you master the tongue twister that is OBS's fan foam finger before.
There's lots of little pitfalls throughout the script.
To sit in solemn silence.
I just have to do one sports bit of news here. WADA, the anti-doping agency, the World Anti-Doping Agency, which governs tennis, the ATP Tour, has suspended world #1 Jannik Sinner for 3 months. But it just so happens that these are the 3 months that don't contain a slam. So in a way, he's not being punished. It would be very difficult for him to lose his ranking as long as he stays in form during his suspension. It's a complicated story about why he was faulted for doping. Apparently, one of his coaches or physios rubbed a bad ointment on him that is known to have like a stimulant that came through in his pee. And most of his colleagues admit that there's no way he would have gotten an advantage from that particular ointment.
Sure.
But it shows up in a drug test, you know?
Sure.
So nobody really wanted him to be banned or to face that type of punishment, but you have to be fair. Like other people have been, suspended for, similar infractions. But it seems like WADA is giving Jannik Sinner a sweetheart deal. I'm a Jannik Sinner fan. I don't want to see him, lose any position because of this, but it doesn't smell right.
No, you only want to see him in a threesome with Zendaya and Mike Feist. Or Josh O'Connor. Dealer's choice.
Let's talk some opera.
Free throw.
Samoan tenor Pene Pati just made his Metropolitan Opera debut as the Duke in Rigoletto, and he is currently singing Rodolfo at Bayerische Staatsoper, a role he will bring to Chicago, making his lyric opera debut in a starry cast, which includes Eileen Perez, friend of the show, as Mimi, Gabriela Reyes as Musetta, friend of the show Will Liverman as Marcello, and conductor Jordan D'Souza. Lyric Opera of Chicago is betting a lot on this production. They're going to present it 10 times between March 15th and April 12th. Before we begin this free throw on the topic of Rodolfo, here is a bit of the opening of Rodolfo's aria Che gelida manina.
Aspetti, signorina, le dirò con 2 parole. Chi son? Chi sei?
My guest today, calling in from Munich, is Pene Pati. Pene, welcome to Opera Box Score.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So you are in the middle of La Boheme in Munich, and you just wrapped up Rigoletto at the Met. This is a big year for you. You have your Met debut, and very soon you'll be coming to Chicago to make your lyric opera debut. You've already debuted in San Francisco, so it's not like Americans haven't seen you.
Yes.
But these houses are getting bigger, aren't they? The spaces you have to sing.
San Francisco, yeah, you're right. San Francisco was my young artist. I did the Adler Fellowship there and the Maryland there, so it's kind of like my alma mater, so to speak. And to go out to the other spots like the Met and Chicago and hopefully more was kind of very strategic. I thought, okay, I have to time this right and go in with the right thing that really shows your voice and its capabilities. So yeah, I feel like the timing has come right now.
Well, I would love to hear you. We're going to talk about Rodolfo in a second, but I would love to hear you sing some of this rare bel canto stuff that you're doing on your recordings. I mean, like, have you been asked to sing Raoul and Huguenot, or is anybody even making that opera happen?
You know, I think we're more inclined to do it here in Europe, but if it ever came around, because I know Michael Spires has done a lot of these obscure operas, if it comes around, I would absolutely give it a go. I think, why not? It's nice to explore something different.
I wonder if Michael Spires has built his career doing bizarro stuff because of his, very strange voice, beautiful voice. And you are right now going to be touted around as like this, young, flashy lyric tenor who sings the Duke and Rodolfo,
But also, Michael, he's such an incredible person, and I think he holds the record now for the most roles learned by somebody. I just heard that literally like 2 days ago, and I thought, wait, I thought Domingo held it, but I think he holds it now.
You're right now singing Rodolfo, and on this episode, my colleague and I are comparing favorite Boheme recordings. Do you have a favorite recording? And not just because of the tenor, because like the whole thing works.
Oh man, I think you can't get any further than, well, okay, you probably can, but this the quintessential one that I always had listened to was the Pav and Perennial one.
The Karajan, yeah.
I mean, the Karajan one was,
yeah.
I mean, wow.
Yeah, no, you're right. We love that recording. Now that we've gotten that off the table, have you listened to other ones and discovered things? It's like, oh wow, that's a different way to do it. I never thought of it.
You know what? No, but I've seen a lot of on like videos. I've actually seen even modern ones, say like Villazon and Trepko's version. I've seen a lot in person. I mean, I saw the current one with Eleonora Burato and Palenzani, and I'm still trying to find, but I haven't seen any old school ones. Unless you have one that you're like, you gotta see this one.
No, I'm just thinking more about phrasing and well, really, it's phrasing when it comes down to it. Like, where can you take time? We're so used to hearing the Karajan one, so I think that our idea of the score is like, oh, that's Karajan's idea of the score. That there's other people, like Toscanini, or for example, it's like, oh, that goes by much faster with him, or even James Levine. We don't talk about him right now, but you listen to how he stretches Mimi's aria, Mi chiamano Mimi. It's like, I did not know that aria can be 6 minutes long.
You're right. And you know what? I have done a Boheme that was literally under 2 hours with the interval.
Yeah.
And then one that's been like 3 hours long. So yeah, it's quite interesting to hear people's different versions. You know what's funny though is that a lot of the times it's never the artist. It's always the conductor. It's nearly always the conductor who either makes it either faster or slower. And disregarding sometimes the tenor or the soprano has their own idea of how they want to interpret, but it always comes second place. That's the reality. And unless you're sitting at the top of the ladder.
Yeah. Well, now, how many productions have you sung of this so far that you can count?
I think this is my sixth. After Chicago and in San Francisco, right after there'll be 8 productions and totaling about 48 shows in total, I think. So I'm coming up to the 50.
Yeah. So you have got this paced pretty well. Are there any pitfalls in the role that maybe a young tenor, just starting to learn it, might not realize? Like, oh, you gotta, not sing so much in Act 3, so you have whatever this moment in Act 4.
Oh, absolutely. The Act 3 is by far the toughest. It requires a lot of emotion, but also because there's a lot of emotion, you can't fully get into it because you're gonna start pushing because you're so moved by it. So you have to control so much in that, only to realize that you have to be now quite soft in the last act because you're dealing with her. You can't be screaming in her face saying, go to sleep, go to sleep. So the pitfall really is Act 3, controlling yourself, being emotionally driven in a different way, not in a passionate way, but in a saddened, reflective way. The first act is still the toughest because you can get carried away with the first half. And then you realize, oh God, I've got my aria and the duet to come.
Are you saying like with the boys, like the rough housing stuff, like you are?
Yeah, because when Benoit walks in, you're like, there's a lot of big singing, but you gotta tell yourself, oh, this first half it's conversational. There is no real line. When Mimi turns up, she's the first one to sing lines. Everyone else is just singing conversational lines like, oh my God, let's burn the chair. Where's the wine? So you take that part easy until Mimi turns up. Then you're like, okay, this is where I really gotta bunker down and use my technique.
Last question for you. We know that you you came up in New Zealand and that you met Kiri Te Kanawa early in your studies. Yeah. Can you talk to us about her and maybe what mentorship she's offered you and what you might have gained just by even listening to her as an artist?
I will never forget the first time I met her. She told me to turn up to a masterclass that she was taking at 7 a.m. And I thought, this is a test. Like, why would you tell me to turn up at 7 a.m.? And she goes, I'm going to be there to get ready for the masterclass at 8 o'clock. First of all, who's doing a masterclass at 8 o'clock? I mean, come on, no singers want to do this. But I turn up at 7 o'clock and she sings Au Conjador, the list at 7 o'clock. And I thought, okay, well, she's ready to go.
And at this point, she's like in her 60s, right?
Yeah, this was literally just like 7-10 years ago, actually. And she took me under her wing and she really looked after me in the first part of my journey. And I remember she bought me clothes in Cardiff because I was too embarrassed to say that I couldn't afford anything. Like I had this jacket and that was it. She was like, why have you got this thin jacket in the middle of winter? And I kept saying, oh, well, it's because I got thick skin. And then she pulled me aside. She goes, I know you're just trying to hide it. You're very islander about it. I said, oh, thank you, Auntie. And so she took me out and she invited me to her home as well. And she was such an auntie. She wasn't even Kiri Te Kanawa until we stepped out and then she turned into Kiri Te Kanawa. But underneath it all, she was so loving and she was so, she gave a lot of direction saying, maybe you should try this. You should go here. Let's listen to random things. I really enjoyed it. And I really enjoyed her mentorship.
Kiri Te Kanawa, fellow Kiwi, singing a little bit of Mimi. That's from a live performance in Victoria State Opera in Melbourne from 1989. And now that we've heard about Rodolfo from Pene Pati, we thought we'd take a little bit of time to consider La Boheme recording, because I know that, you kids out there don't know where to start. There really are
almost too many good options available to you.
Well, the option that most collectors end up recommending as one of the top two is is mono, right? The Beecham?
From 56, I want to say.
Yeah. A mono set conducted by Thomas Beecham, starring Jussi Björling as Rodolfo and Victoria de Los Angeles as Mimi, with Lucina Mara as Musetta and Robert Merrill as Marcello. That's a pretty incredible cast. I enjoy this recording because I think that Victoria de Los Angeles does achieve a fragility in the way she presents her Mimi. It's not my favorite tone. It's not a voice that just like spins and flows and gets so rich. But I do think that she makes a character out of it.
And I was kind of surprised that how much I really didn't enjoy this recording. I'm not going to go out and say that I fully hated it, but given how beloved it is and how elevated its reputation among listeners and collectors, I was just left a little bit cold. And I do enjoy some De Los Angeles from time to time. I really love her on that Faust recording with Gedda and Boris Christoph, but I just found her to be overly matronly, and lacking some of the, lacking the warmth and the real pathos that you get from many of the other recordings that you're going to talk about. And similarly, like Björling's a singer who I really, really like, but I found his voice to be so, it's like a very compared to many other tenors who are recorded, it's like a more slender instrument. It's very trumpet-like, it's very silvery, and it really has a lot of cut, which for Rodolfo, just to me was not as good of a match as a singer who can really like take flight and kind of wrap you up in the warmth of their voice.
Here's an unpopular take. I think that Jussi Björling is actually a great stylist, but I'd never liked his tone quality.
Yeah.
I think his vibrato has different speeds that I don't always appreciate.
Mm-hmm. And some of it you wonder like how it would sound on better recording equipment, but like Lucina Mara really stole that recording for me. Because her Musetta is just so fun and sparkling. And we talked a lot about
Lucina Mara,
the late Lucina Mara. I was just about to say, like, we talked about her when she passed recently, and just what a stalwart, undersung opera singer. Never undersung personally, but under-recognized as for her contributions to the art form, except by like people in the industry or people in New York who got to see her a lot of times when she would jump in at the Met. And the biggest thing that this recording has going for it, I would say, is the conducting, because the orchestra sounds fantastic. The tempos are nice and fleet. There's a lot of contrast. There's just a lot of spirit. And Thomas Beecham worked very closely with Toscanini before making this recording, and so he really has the style in his ear and in his hands, and like you can hear it come across. But the singers, I don't know if they lived up to what some of their competitors in this little experiment were able to put down. Well,
if we're going to talk about musical detail, I think the most detailed Mimi on record is that of Maria Callas.
And oh my God, it's just stunning.
If you remember my Oliver's Corner from, I don't know how long ago, it was 10, 15 years ago. Yeah. I remember sitting down with the score and listening to Maria Callas sing this aria, Mi chiamano Mimi, and noticing how much of what she does is actually on the page. Mm-hmm. And it makes me think, like, why do all these other singers ignore all that stuff? And Maria Callas is so faithful to Puccini's markings. Let's hear a little bit of Mi chiamano Mimi, just so you could, grab your score and watch what she does. And it's really remarkable. It really shows us that Puccini knew what he was doing. He knew how to create a character through music. So the Callas recording also features her regular partner in crime, Giuseppe Di Stefano. And, Di Stefano is one of those tenors that it just sounds so natural for him. Like it sounds like he's talking, but his voice doesn't always flow freely.
It's extremely hit or miss. And there are both some hits and some misses on this album of upper, not even always high notes, but sometimes upper high note, like upper middle notes in the, like getting toward the top of the passaggio, where he just comes into it so wide open. And that excitement can turn into a little bit of a bucking bronco ride, like really easily.
Yeah, and where you want it to be
tenors.
where you want it to be conversational and easy, it's effortful for him sometimes.
Yeah.
But this recording features a 24-year-old Anna Moffo.
Real luxury casting.
As Musetta. This is before Anna Moffo was anybody, but she was on the rise. And wow, she sounds like Musetta. I think she might be the most
stunning. Oh, without a doubt. It's just an incredible performance as Musetta.
Moving on to, there's a couple of Tebaldis.
There's an earlier one with Erede conducting, and I know Hilde Guden is her Musetta on her earlier set with that's from 1951 with Giacinto Prandelli as the Rodolfo. I didn't spend as much time with that one this time as I did with the Serafine recording that she made a little bit later with Carlo Bergonzi and Gianna D'Angelo, who famously replaced Maria Callas in the Tales of Hoffmann for Cluton, with a lot of other names that we have brought up in this segment already. And that recording has some really, really excellent moments. But as always is the case with Renata Tebaldi, even though I was hoping that the fact that Mimi tends to sit a little bit lower than some of her other roles, anything above an A is just like a real coin flip. And some of those coin flips come up heads, and some of them come up about a half step below heads.
Well, I don't want to disparage either of these artists, but there's something about Tebaldi that I'm learning to understand, and that is how much the audience loved her. And how sincere she seemed while she was singing, and how warm the sound was, how generous the sound was.
It's really interesting because I had only really ever listened to her over like digital recordings for most of my time as listening to music, and there are some phrases that just knock me back because I think that they're so stunning what she's able to do with her sound. But I was shocked when I continued my little quest into being a vinyl collector, how different her voice sounds in an analog format. I do think that there is some noise in her sound that just doesn't translate well when you compress it.
Yeah. Well, the artist that I am beginning to feel like our modern day parallel is Eileen Perez. Except Eileen Perez has a longer top. But there's something about Eileen Perez that's like so sincere when she sings that people just like get weak in the knees, you know?
And sincerity is also like a word that would be at the top of my list to describe Carlo Bergonzi as Rodolfo. I just find his singing so ardent and so passionate, and it feels so present. I can almost like feel it in my chest just listening to him. How he would sing it and the resonance there. It is a role that definitely you can hear that he started as a baritone with how I usually listen to him in Verdi, and so the way that he has to navigate like the fact that the Puccini roles tend to go a little higher and sit a little bit higher and like really require at least one very climactic C. It's just interesting to listen to him navigate it, and it comes off splendidly, but it's a headier sound than I was expecting from how he sings in his middle and upper middle voice. The
Tebaldi Bergonzi recording does have the benefit of Ettore Bastianini as Marcello, a singer that I just adore, and I love his sound. Moving on to the first Renata Scotto recording, recorded in 1961 with Votto once again. Gianni Poggi is the Rodolfo. That would be my pick to enjoy Scotto's interpretation. She recorded it again in 1980 with a little more wear on the voice and a little bit more self-indulgence in the phrase lengths. but impressive, very, very impressive phrase lengths. She's paired with Alfredo Kraus. Another reason why we might just dismiss this recording out of hand is because it's conducted by James Levine, but does have Cheryl Milnes as Marcello, a very, very American, rich sound. And Paul Pliszka, we haven't talked about Colline, but I love Paul Pliszka. Very woofy, kind of cigar smoking, tone quality.
Another recently departed great.
I know. We move on to Anna Moffo, not as Musetta, but as Mimi in the Eric Leinsdorf set. One might say that the role is a little bit big for her at this point in her career, but she would grow into this type of I would say it's a full lyric role. It's not Lirico Spinto. It's lyric.
I mean, she recorded bleeding chunks of Manon Lescaut, so it's definitely more in her, more in what you would expect to see her in on stage than that.
Another Robert Merrill performance as Marcello, Mary Costa as Musetta.
Better known to many listeners as the singing voice of Aurora from Sleeping Beauty.
Oh. The problem with this recording, and I'm going to get in trouble for this.
think I'm with you.
Richard Tucker is not the right match for her in this particular instance.
Right.
His voice is just too dark and, in a way, aggressive.
He really sings it like a bull in a china shop.
Yeah. This recording has been remastered, so maybe my older copy has too much distortion on it. But when he, is singing above the staff and when he's singing above mezzo forte, my recording tends to get distorted.
I don't know that that's particularly the problem, because the way that he's approaching the vocal lines here just lack the finesse and that kind of understated show-offiness that you get from the best Puccini singers, where it's you don't even know how hard this is except for me living up here all day. But I just before we started recording, I was doing some more spot checking of some of the big moments, and the hook he does into the climactic phrase of Che gelida manina really caught me by surprise, because it just takes you out of the moment to hear technique working like that rather than hearing the music and the drama and the character.
A great Verdi singer and another great Verdi and bel canto singer who recorded Boheme at least twice, Jose Carreras, once with Katia Ricciarelli, I want to say, and a second time right around the time of his leukemia diagnosis with Barbara Hendricks. I always want to like the Hendricks-Carreras recording, but Carreras is, again, as in the Moffo Tucker, just a little bit too aggressive. Mm-hmm. And his voice is too dark. And when it's all said and done, I think Barbara Hendricks can sing many different things, but maybe not Puccini. Maybe that's not her forte, just the way.
Is that what you really think, or did Michael Rice beat that into your head 20 years ago?
No, because the voice doesn't have an Italianate sound. I'll say that. Yeah.
No.
But it's a super interesting sound. I always am, whenever I hear her voice, I instantly recognize it. I'm always fascinated by what she'll do.
Mm-hmm.
Another reason why I like the Conlon recording on paper is because it features my boyfriend, Gino Quilico, as Marcello. Pretty lightweight Marcello, but so handsome. It hurts.
Well, talking about It Boys in the moment, or not of previous moments, what was were there any newer recordings that kind of caught your ear?
Newer recordings?
Or for better or worse.
Well, I mean, I want to like the Rolando Villazón recording because I'm such a fan, but it has a soprano we don't talk about.
It's true. Even though I did see her do that role in Chicago before she, sided with Putin and took back off to Russia. And I remember being surprised at how much better it came across in person than on recording, where it sounds kind of muddled. As
everything is
she
generic
often
to
does.
me.
Yeah.
There is a recording. I know you wanted to move forward, but there's a recording that is important to me, but is not considered to be any kind of good. It's the one conducted by Leonard Bernstein, which features Jerry Hadley and Thomas Hampson, and my former acting teacher, Angelina Rayo, who is an amazing interpreter of Kurt Weill and was a very close friend of Leonard Bernstein. So I know that recording is important to her, and so it's important to me. I cherish it, but I understand there are critiques of it. It Boy from the 90s when I was in college. I had the hugest crush on Roberto Alagna when he came out in his super white tights, super tight whites, super white, his tight leggings as Romeo. I forget who was it Leontina Valdova in that Royal Opera House video? I forget who it was.
It could be.
Anyway, he recorded Rodolfo with Antonio Pappano and the Philharmonia Orchestra early in his career with Leontina Valdova, Thomas Hampson once again, and Ruth Ann Swenson. Actually, a pretty starry recording.
That's a blast from the past. Ruth Ann Swenson, you don't hear about these days.
That's luxury casting for Musetta. I actually like Alagna so much as Rodolfo, his first recording of it, because he had voice for days and he had very inventive phrasing. And I thought that he was a really good actor, at least vocal actor. Let's listen to a little bit of Rodolfo's aria.
Che gelida manina, se la lasci riscaldar, cercar che giova, al buio non si trova. Ma per fortuna è una notte di luna, e qui la luna l'abbiamo vicina. Aspetti, signorina, le dirò con due parole chi son, che faccio, come vivo.
So innocent, naive, a little bit horny. I loved it. He did record it a second time with
his partner in crime.
his then wife,
His yeah.
Angela Gheorghiu. The cast for that recording includes
What didn't they record?
Elisabeth Toscano as Musetta and Simon Kinleyside as Marcello, conducted by Roberto Di Candia. You took a listen to that. This conducted by Ricardo Chailly. What was your impression of that second set for Alagna?
It's fine. It's nothing special. They both are kind of firmly into the tics that you associate with their singing. I often find Gheorghiu's tone just to be very interesting. But I wouldn't say that it's her most disciplined performance on record. And he is not... the voice just doesn't sound as effortless or as brilliant as in the early recording.
So do you know of any recordings that came out in the past 10 or 15 years that caught your attention?
No, I was trying to tee you up to spill tea on on
there are
Inferno,
there are so many. But we have to finally arrive at what is your favorite of all?
It is yet to be dethroned. There are wonderful moments on... if anything is going to compete with it, it would be the Voto with Maria Callas. But I just can't... For me, Boheme sounds like the Herbert von Karajan recording with Mirella Freni and Luciano Pavarotti, English soprano Elizabeth Harwood as Musetta, and Rolando Panarai as Marcello. And a real luxury casting of Nikolai Gaurov as Colline as well.
Yeah.
The future
Freni.
Mr. Freni, yes.
Yeah.
But we've talked on this podcast before about Pavarotti and Freni's synergy. They know each other so well, and they sing into each other's sounds in a way that's really difficult to replicate with people who didn't drink milk from the same breast. And the... Karajan, unlike when we talked about their Butterfly together with Karajan, we mentioned that it was our guest judge, Anthony Baresi, called out that like it's quite an indulgent recording, and that weakness does not apply in the same way to the Carillon. It's much fleeter, it's much zippier. The bros having fun scenes really do go by. You get the romance, and there is nothing like Mirella Freni's tone when she really takes off into a phrase and just unfurls that voice that to me, hers is the best example of real, true chiaroscuro, because there's such brilliance and gleam at the front of her sound and a real velvety richness backing all of that up.
And Pavarotti was in his prime. Like, he sounds
in
like
his best role.
Yeah, he sounds like a waterfall, you know, it's like the sound is just pouring out of him, and it's so easy and golden and dark and bright at the same time. It's just completely a technical mastery of that music. So
I do really love what Freni puts out there on her earlier recording with Thomas Skippers, with Nicolai Gedda as her partner, but you can hear that the voice when she was younger is just a lot more slender, and when you get into the early mid 70s, it develops that voluptuous tone quality that I associate with her. Really, it's hard to pick just one clip from this recording, because I think from beginning to end, it's one of the best opera recordings ever made. But I would like to play a little bit of the Sono Andati sequence from Mimi's death scene, because I think it really captures the pathos that she brings out of this role.
I just want to add one more note to Mirella Freni, and it's something that was always talked about in my conservatory days, and I want to carry on the tradition so that future generations keep the legend of the career of Mirella Freni and how it started with the Inas and the Ettas, and how, you know, gradually she added in lyric roles and then lyrico spinto roles and then finally full spinto roles. She did the whole, you know, from soubrette to, you know, Aida, or to Leonora. And that's
she
like something.
She recorded Aida, never on stage, but
yeah. But that's, you know, that's a path, and it took her decades to do it. And she sang until she was in her 60s, I want to say.
And
she was
still sounded pretty fresh.
Yeah. So there's a lot to be learned from Mirella Freni. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, click follow, and on Apple Podcasts, hit the plus sign.
Huddle up. Let's go inside the huddle.
Well, after that, we're going to go a completely different direction and talk to one of the artists to watch in 2025, mezzo-soprano Meridian Prall. You'll remember that I heard her sing Cornelia at Opera Theatre of St. Louis's Julius Caesar this past summer. It's been a big year for Meridian Prall, leading to her debut with Washington Concert Opera next month. Before we review what's been happening with Meridian Prall these past few years, here's a little bit of her winning performance at the recent Lafont competition. This is Parto Parto from La Clemenza di Tito.
Guardami tutto brio, e ricordi amore, quando ti ruggei, una santa beltà,
Just a little bit of our guest Meridian Prall singing at the Metropolitan Opera La Font competition from last year. Something that you sang to for the win. You're a winner.
That was crazy, but yeah.
Welcome to Opera Box Score. That was the Metropolitan Opera Orchestra conducted by Evan Rogister. Meridian Prall, you have to know, maybe you know this already, but at the beginning of this year, my colleagues and I here on the podcast were all like doing our picks for artists to watch in 2025. And you were my pick for somebody to pay attention to. I hope.
Gosh, stop. That's so cool.
I hope it works out for me because it's all about my own hubris.
Yeah. I don't know if you should bet like money, but like bet your like spirit on it, you know, be like, yay, like hopefully this happens.
For those who are new to the podcast, I heard Meridian sing at Opera Theater St. Louis last summer, Cornelia in Giulio Cesare. And I remember reporting to the pod how impressed I was with so much of your performance, your tone, which is a given. You have a beautiful voice, duh. But also your poise and your consistency. I forget how many arias Cornelia has, but, you know, every character has it.
She has 5, but I did 3.
Well, you sounded like $1,000,000 in each of them. And I just remember your characterization as being very dignified and believable. And I don't usually expect who I would consider young artists to be that complete already this early in their career. So it makes sense to me that you made an impression at the Levant competition. And then it's the same year that you, what did you take at Operalia? Were you like an audience favorite or were you like a third something?
I was 3rd place, and I shared it with a couple other fantastic singers, which was like awesome because I feel like we're weirdly like there's like a 3rd place club. I feel like in the Operalia ethos. That's like, I mean, it's really fun to be in that spot. Yeah, so that was an awesome week. That was a crazy cool week for sure.
Well, in addition to wanting to introduce you to the audience, I want especially young singers who are not that much younger than you, or maybe the same age as you, to understand what these past, 2 or 3 years have been like. I feel like you went from being, you know, doing young artist programs to becoming like a principal artist in these companies you're singing with. It's like turbocharged. And, yeah, I would love to hear your path and which steps along the way you felt were really important that you did to get to the next step.
You know, in the young artist world, you get these talks all the time that there's no one path to success. And then you're also wondering like, well, what is success? And like, what does that mean to me? Like, what do I want? And I think sometimes that even gets lost along the way. But my steps were, you know, I was really grinding through school. So I went right from high school to music school and then to my master's degree at University of Michigan. And it was just, that all sort of came to a crashing end in 2020 with the what my husband and I call the panini, like just came to an end. So, you know, but you know, there's a lot of like bad things about that year for sure that we can't even begin to quantify. But like the blessing in it was definitely that I got a break, like from the grind of being a student and of being like, you know, just trying to push through school. So that was a blessing I got. Another blessing I had was that, Pat Reset runs the Young Artist program at OTSL. And she, like, I did not know what, I bargained for with her because she is incredible. Like, you always know that, like, okay, yes, Pat Reset is incredible, but, like, really on a deep level, she's very awesome. So, that was sort of the first step that sort of began connecting these dots for me. Because I was there I was supposed to be there in person, but, it got canceled that summer. But she put together this whole barrage of, like, lessons and coachings with, like, so many famous people and all these things. It was crazy.
That you did online?
Yes. It was awesome. And, like, I had a voice lesson with Isabel Leonard, and I was like, just stop. Like, this is insane. I was like, who am I? But the thing that I think helped me get asked back the next year was not necessarily my voice at the time. I think a lot of it was my eagerness to be humbled and to learn what it was going to take to make to further perfect my craft, to get better. I remember doing a master class with Pat Reset, and, like, I think one of my superpowers is being like, oh yeah, I'll try that. And I try it, and, like, it either works or it doesn't. But I don't assign, like, success or emotional value to that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think you can get really caught up doing that. So I think, eagerness to learn and the ability to take the things that were working and, like, truly integrate them into my craft. So I think that got me to the next year, where we did a parking lot season with OTSL, which was funny because it was like they're building this, mothership in some parking lot, like, and I would go on a walk and I would see it and I'd be like, wow, that's so cool. So that summer, I didn't.
This is 2022 or 2021?
No, it's 2021. This was 2021. Okay. So we managed to. They still managed to have, like, an industry audition day, which is crazy because that summer things were still pretty, like, socially distanced, and everybody was still doing a lot of that. So. Yeah, but it just so happened that one of those days, Jim Barbado and David Walker were listening to the auditions, and I've got to be honest.
Who are they, just for the audience?
Oh, yes, they're with Palm Beach Opera. So I don't think necessarily, like, looking back, I was so nervous for those auditions because it had been a long time since I, like, did that, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, do I suck? Like, I don't know. So I don't know that I sang, like, particularly well at those auditions, but I think that those two people were listening for, like, what I had, I guess, which I think was potential. So, I guess it had to have been. Right? So I ended up getting sort of a late call to be an apprentice at Palm Beach Opera they do sort of like a 6-month long season or, like, internship. So I went down there, I learned a bunch of stuff. I was, like, study covering Carmen. So I was, like, such a nerd. I was like, I'm going to learn this whole thing. Like, I learned the whole thing, even though that's, like, there's no way I'm going to sing that, like, but it was, it was fun, and it was good to, like, sink your teeth into something like that after so much time off. So, so that was a really good time because I sort of, like, I had access to all these different coaches. Like, they have great coaches at Palm Beach Opera. I can't recommend, like, for people who are looking at young artist programs still, like, I can't recommend that enough. Like, it was a great part of my artistic development, really. And another part of it was that, like, it built so much confidence for me because, I gave it everything I had. And then I was asked back as a young artist the next year, which is like it's like there's a two-tiered system. So that's, like, the upper tier. So I got to be the mezzo young artist the next year, which was, like, amazing. It's like, yay, I'm getting asked back at these places. Like, people like me. Not that that should be, like, the, the one goal or anything, but it was good for my confidence, right? Yeah, so then I spent a year there, and I got to sing, like, Meg Page and Falstaff with Michael Chioli, and, like, we had a blast. Like, all these other, like like Amber Wagner, like all these great singers.
Holy moly. Meg Page is like a great role to kind of make a debut in, because there isn't a lot of pressure on Meg Page, but it's a title. I mean, it's a fully named role, and like you're in fun ensembles and you take a bow before, certain people or after certain people. I forget the two guys, frickin' frack or whatever they're called.
Right. Oh my gosh. Yeah, and I mean that show is so like one of my favorite shows. So I mean, it wasn't when I started because it's really hard. I was like, man, this is like so much Italian. But it's just such a great show to be in. So yeah, I did that, and then it's funny because I didn't necessarily know if I was ever going to do the Met competition. I don't know exactly why, but I was like, I just don't know if that's like gonna be my thing. Like, I just don't know. And Jim Barbada like really encouraged me to do it. He's like, listen, like former singer, like I did it. I think he shared with me, like, I mean, I've heard from people that it's like, oh, I chose to do it too late, and then I didn't get the feedback that I wanted to, because you can do it like I think until you're 30 now is the rules. And I think I was how old was I? I was 27 at that time. I like had a few more chances, you know what I mean? I was like, okay, yeah. So I just sort of like signed up, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna like give everything I have to this, and it's gonna be what it is, and I'm gonna enjoy it, and either way it's gonna be fine. And so that first like, what is it, the districts is first, I think. Yes,
Yeah.
The district was first,
Then region, and then
yeah. And I didn't realize how much I struggled to sleep the night before competitions until like that night, because I don't know, maybe it's just like I hadn't done like a ton of competitions. I did the Sullivan Foundation, and that was fun. That feels a little different, I think, than the Met competition does. But yeah, so I just sort of like couldn't sleep at all the night before the district. Like, not even a second did I sleep. And I was like, well, this sucks. Like, now I'm not going to make it for sure, because there's no way I could sing with no sleep. Which was a lie, of course, that I was telling myself. But yeah, and I was like shocked that I made it to the next round. I was like, okay, like that's kind of exciting. I'm gonna not do that again. The next round, the same thing happened. And I was like really tried to, like not have that happen, but it did. Like, there's no amount of melatonin that could have made me sleep that night. And I tried, believe me, I tried to like, I pushed the upper limits of that. Yeah, so that I didn't sleep at all, and I was like, well, you know what? I'm just gonna give it my all anyway, and like, I'm probably gonna crack in the lower passaggio once. Like, I'm gonna forgive myself for that in advance. Yeah, so then I just somehow made it to the semifinals past that, and that was incredible. I was like, I mean, I got emotional about it. I was like, this is crazy. Like, never could I have believed that this could be possible. Yeah, and then I didn't, just like, spoiler alert, I never slept at all. Like,
I think we knew that already.
yeah. But so then like the semifinals happened. That was insane. Like, going to New York, which is, I sort of had a love-hate relationship with it, because you associate that with audition and like pressure. You know what I mean? At least I was doing that. I don't do that so much anymore now, but yeah, so I was kind of like, oh my gosh, Midwest, Indiana, Michigan girl, in New York, like doing this crazy thing about to sing on the Met stage. Like, what is this? And, but I made it to the finals. That was incredible. And then got to spend that whole week just like being at the Met and having like literal backstage passes. Like, that was the coolest thing ever. Just like flashing that around, being in the Met tunnel where you go in the back way. Like, I was like, this is like a dream come true. Yeah, so I mean, I've had a lot of very humbling experiences throughout all of this, like what sounds like a really like hero's journey sort of story, but like, I think the moral of it is like, trying not to, in a sense, like worship it. Do you know what I'm saying?
Mm.
Like, I don't know. I guess like a wise person told me one time like everybody worships something, right? Like I
Hmm.
don't know, like some people worship shopping or something, which I've been there, done that from time to time. But what do you have control over as an artist? Like you have control over your preparation, and that's like basically it. Sometimes you don't even have control over the sleep that you get
Yep.
before you sing.
Apparently not. Huh?
It's just like literally all you can do is look at that page of music and like let
Mhm.
your imagination do the rest. Um, and so it's like, choosing to, have a spiritual identity with that and like having a purpose that's beyond just getting to the next level is so important.
Mhm.
It's like, another like side note to this, after winning the Met competition, like it seemed like people were interested in talking to me and things, which is always nice. But I made friends with Christine Gerke, who's amazing. And I remember the first time we like hung out, she asked me like, "What do you want to do? What do you want to do with your career, with your voice and everything?" And I was like, super didn't have an answer. I was like, I don't know that I've really thought about that hard. I think I've been sort of just like in the groove like this whole time, just being like, I worshipped getting better technically for a long time, which I think was necessary. But now it's been more, why am I doing this? What do I want to do with this? And that's just been an awesome thing to explore, like talking about, getting to sing Cornelia, like what's the spiritual identity of that character? And, what do I have that can embody that and bring that to an audience and make them care about it? That's the thing, is it's like telling stories is my favorite thing to do. I mean, here I am like talking for probably like, I don't know, 15 minutes straight about a story, but, you know, that's the thing, is everything's got to have a spiritual identity, and like figuring out what that is and what I bring to that is, I think, hopefully going to be my life's work. So, yeah.
Well, you're 27 now.
No, I'm 29 now. I just
Okay,
had my birthday in February.
Oh,
Yeah.
happy birthday! So you're 29. You're about to sing Anio at Washington Concert Opera, which is a pretty high Svishany role. Cornelia is on the other end. I mean, it's in the basement. You sang this aria for Operalia, the O Malir Immortel, which is pretty, high mezzo stuff. I guess where I'm going with this is trying to figure out where you think your voice is going and what type of repertoire will ultimately be your bread and butter.
That is like so not a question I know yet. That's the thing I try to remind myself, is like in the opera world, I mean, definitely in the opera world, I'm still young, like, and just in general, I'm still a young person.
Oh, for your voice type, you definitely are young.
Yeah. And like, what's she gonna do? What's she gonna do in 10 years? We don't know. Like, could be something totally different. I don't know. It's another thing I don't have control over, is like what physiologically happens to my voice.
Are you thinking about Rossini, since you have been having a crush on or worshiping whatever technique?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean, I used to sing the crap out of Rossini when I was younger. I would love to do it, like, because of how funny you can be. I think I'm trying to answer your question with like, what about the fun, or like the essence of it do I want to do? So I would love to do, maybe I would do like Italian Girl or something else.
Isabella, yeah.
Yeah, that's something I'm interested in. Just because you can be so ridiculous with that. But I mean, I've always had a huge soft spot for early music and like Baroque music. Like,
oh, good.
Honestly, if I could sing Baroque music for the rest of my life and just that, I would do it. Not that to discount anything else, because like I love music. So how could I say it? I love Mozart. Like Mozart and Handel I think, have always been my favorites, and So even, just a life singing them like would be amazing.
Yeah. I mean, there are singers who have definitely made entire careers of just those composers, but I think that I'm just going to go out on a wild limb here and say that when opera companies start to see what you can do technically, they're going to want bigger things from you,
Yeah. Yeah. And that's exciting. Like, I love that prospect. And I think there's also an element to your career, which is like, it's also a business, So it's like, what does the business, I guess, horoscope look like for today? Like, where do you fit into that? I don't know.
You got to learn some American opera, who knows what, but you already learned Carmen, so that's already, you could just recall that in the future.
Yeah, she's ready to go. She is so ready to go. That'll be awesome.
Next week, you're going to head out to DC to prepare Anio in Clemenza di Tito with Washington Concert Opera. I don't know that much about Washington Concert Opera. And I guess since you're not there yet, you don't know much about it either. But can you tell me anything about this contract and about preparing for this performance?
Yes. So it seems to me, based on my research of Washington Concert Opera, that they do, they're like all about the music. So that's why there's no like set or costumes.
Mm-hmm.
And they do things that aren't frequently done, especially like in the US. So those, like, that is, it's funny how much that speaks to me. It's like almost embarrassing because it's like, I remember when I was in high school, I was in show choir and I was like, can we just sing? Like, can we just sing the music and not do all the other stuff? Not that obviously like the spectacle of opera is so important and so integral to it, but there's something that my nerd brain just is obsessed with about just singing and just listening to it. You know what I mean? So I think that's going to be, I think that's kind of their thing, is to do that. And it's also very exciting to do Clemenza di Tito, which is like hardly ever done in the US, at least, like, because it's very serious opera, and Mozart's not exactly known for that. So I think those two things about this company are very exciting to me, and I'm excited to meet the challenges of that.
Well, it's been great to meet you. I didn't give you a chance to talk about, you said you're from Michigan. I don't know if you're obliged to say like "Go Blue" or something like that.
Well, the funny thing is, I'm from I live in like the greater Michiana area is what they call it. It's like right on the border. So I actually live very close to South Bend, which is home of Notre Dame, which was, I'm like such not a sport person, but the college one that they do with the colleges, Notre Dame got really far in that and everybody was losing their minds. It was crazy. Yeah. My husband actually does like trash cleanup after the games. That's like one of his side jobs that he does.
You should be interviewing him. That's interesting.
Honestly, probably. He's very more interesting than I am. But yeah, he said that the trash cleanup after that game that like qualified them, there was a lot of trash to pick up. That's what he said.
Yeah. Well, this is really the last question. You talked earlier about like worshiping, making your voice better or technically proficient. That's an athletic pursuit, wouldn't you say?
Oh, totally. Oh my gosh, yes. Yes. I can elaborate on that.
Yeah, a bit.
Yeah, so like there's a very athletic like side to singing and to improving your voice, and like you have to know so much about how things feel. That's kind of, there's like so much pedagogy and like science involved, but also like how does this feel in my body? Like, what is my uvula doing at this exact moment? I don't know. Like, that's just a silly example, but yeah, being an athlete as a singer is a very serious thing. And, you also have to be, in shape so that you can run across the stage however many times the director says.
Or when you're Cornelia being thrown around by Kimon Mara.
Yeah, oh my gosh. I just gotta say, like, the cast for that show was so much fun.
Bonkers, yeah, I know. It was awesome cast.
He was amazing. And he's like the nicest person that would never like attack anyone. So it was just really funny to see that side of him, It's like, wow, I didn't know you had that in you. That's so cool.
Washington Concert Opera's performance of La Clemenza di Tito is on Saturday, March 1st. My thanks to the PR team for Washington Concert Opera, and thanks to Meridian for being a guest. Help us spread the word about Opera Box Score by giving us a rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and if you have a few extra moments, why not write a review? Coming up next, it's the 2-minute drill.
This just in, the 2-minute drill.
All right, listen up. Here's everything you need to know about what happened in Operaland this week.
The Metropolitan Opera has announced its 2025-26 season, holding steady at 18 productions, including 6 new to the Met stagings. Mason Bates' The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay, friend of the show Rolando Villazon's production of La Sonnambula, Carlos Edwards' production of I Puritani, Yuval Sharon's highly anticipated Tristan und Isolde with friend of the show Lisa Davidson, Kaya Sarriaho's final opera, Innocence, and Gabriela Elena Frank and Nilo Cruz's El Último Sueño de Frida y Diego.
LA Opera has also announced their upcoming season, with Missy Mazzoli's Lincoln and the Bardo notably missing from the list. LA Opera President Christopher Kolch said, "With rising expenses, it's harder for us to manage the main manifestation of all of our potential dreams. It's a wonderful project, and I think it will be very impactful when it gets to the Met." James Conlon will conduct 3 of the 5 productions in his final season as music director: West Side Story, directed by friend of the show Francesca Zambello, Lee Blakely's staging of Falstaff, and Barry Kosky's beloved The Magic Flute. The season will also include revivals of La Boheme and Fallon McDermott's Akhenaten.
Welsh National Opera has announced its 80th anniversary season with new productions of Flying Dutchman and Tosca, as well as the return of recent successes Candide and Blaze of Glory by composer David Hackbridge Johnson and librettist Emma Jenkins. The announcement comes on the heels of recent protests from the W&O chorus over compulsory redundancies.
More than 1,500 people were evacuated from Paris's Champs-Élysées Theatre during a performance of Lully's Persée just minutes after the performance began. The fire started in the theater's basement kitchen, but there were no casualties.
The newly Trumpified Kennedy Center has canceled an upcoming appearance for the Gay Men's Chorus of Washington without explanation, removing the event from their website. The performance was set to take place as a part of World Pride. Friend of the show Karen Slack, however, has confirmed that the performance of her African Queens concert with pianist Kevin Miller will go on as scheduled.
Former Kennedy Center Treasurer Shonda Rhimes and Artistic Advisor Renee Fleming have joined Ben Folds in resigning from the institution following the Trump takeover. Said Fleming, "I've treasured the bipartisan support for this institution as a beacon of America at our best. I hope the Kennedy Center continues to flourish and serve the passionate and diverse audience in our nation's capital and across the country."
Interim executive director and alleged Trump stooge Rick Grinnell claimed that the performing arts organization has, quote, 0 cash on hand and 0 in reserves, and the deferred maintenance is a crisis. For the past months, they've been digging the debt reserves. Good thing Donald Trump made himself in charge of all the fundraising.
Luckily, reinforcements are on the way. A petition has been created and has acquired over 38,000 signatures as of the time of this recording. The Kennedy Center belongs to all Americans. President Trump's unprecedented decision to fire board members over drag performances threatens not just drag art, but the fundamental promise that our national cultural institutions reflect the full diversity and creativity of our nation, argues the petition.
In an interview with NPR, former Kennedy Center President Deborah Rutter spoke out for the first time following her firing, saying, "This is more than just the local performing arts center. It represents America to the world, and it invites the world to our nation's capital to be a showcase for all of the arts. I'm really, really, really sad about what happens to our artists, what happens on our stages, and our staff who support them."
The National Symphony Orchestra musicians also jumped into the fray, saying, "We, the musicians of the National Symphony Orchestra, are proud to perform for our patron, our community in our nation's capital, and the country at large. We continue to look forward to seeing you all at our concerts."
Leaving the Washington Newsbeat, British conductor Edward Gardner has apologized for comparing singers at Naples' Teatro San Carlo to warring mafia families, after he was threatened with a defamation suit. Gardner explained, "Shortly before my arrival in Naples, I was informed that 2 members of the chorus had a public fight just outside the theater, resulting in 1 person being hospitalized. I was very surprised by this. However, I did not intend to suggest that the choir were members of the mafia, and I am more than happy to retract that allegation." Well, that settles that.
Janae Bridges made her debut at New York Fashion Week during the Frederick Anderson Fall 2025 Collection Showcase. Bridges also performed the Habanera from Carmen at the event, saying, "When I got the call from Frederick, I immediately knew this was a manifestation of my dreams. I was able to merge my love for high fashion and opera, and most importantly, bring my voice and opera to a new audience.
In trade news, now that Renee Fleming has some time on her hands, she's making her way across the summer program circuit. Fleming will join Wolf Trap Opera as artist development advisor for a 3-year term, and is also set to make her directorial debut at the helm of A Così fan tutte this summer at Aspen Music Festival. Fleming plans to set the opera in the 1980s at the beginning of the wrestling boom. Well, you can color me intrigued.
Exit stage right. Swiss soprano Edith Mathis has died at the age of 86. A favorite singer of Karl Böhm and Herbert von Karajan, she was a fixture of the international opera circuit in the second half of the 20th century, performing frequently at the Bavarian State Opera, Metropolitan Opera, and others in soubrette roles. Mathis leaves behind a significant discography of opera, concert work, and song recordings, including the Karl Böhm Marriage of Figaro that was featured in The Shawshank Redemption.
And on this day, February 19th, some premieres include the 1667 first performance of Antonio Cesti's opera The Misfortunes of Love in Vienna. Handel's Alexander's Feast premiered at Covent Garden in London in 1736. And Johann Christoph Bach's opera Orione premiered also in London, but at the King's Theatre in 1763.
Johann Christian, he was a Christian, not a Christian.
First performance of Johann Christian Bach's opera Orione at the King's Theatre in London. Same city, different theatre, and that was in 1763, which careful viewers will notice is an anagram of 1736. 1914 saw the first performance of Riccardo Zandonai's opera Francesca da Rimini in Turin. Douglas Moore's opera, The Emperor's New Clothes, premiered in New York City in 1949. And a lot of notable birthdays today. In 1743, Italian composer Luigi Boccherini was born in Lucca. Soprano Caterina Cavalieri, the Viennese-based soprano who created the role of Constanze in Die Entführung aus dem Serail, among other Mozart roles, and was portrayed in the movie Amadeus by Christine Ebersole, was born in 1760. The Spanish-Italian soprano and relative of Patti LuPone, Adelina Patti, was born in 1843. Bass Helmut Frehn was born in 1915 in Buchbach. He sang in the premiere of a number of 20th century operas, including Zielich's Troilus and Cressida and Kleber's Der Raube. Romanian composer George Kurtag was born in 1926 in Lugoj. Happy birthday to Russian tenor Vladimir Atalantov, who was born in St. Petersburg, then Leningrad. And happy birthday to English soprano Penelope Walmsley Clark in 1949.
And that's your 2-minute drill.
A wonderful rendition of De Vieni non tardar from Edith Mathis, from a German TV production of Marriage of Figaro. Such a sweet sound and really just spot-on characterization of this role.
Yeah, I think that this is the type of tone quality that is like textbook soubrette, you know? Mm-hmm. Like very bright, very evenly produced top to bottom, very forward placement in the lower register as opposed to, you know, now it's a tendency for, you know, sopranos who especially sing this role to develop more chest tone and develop more like bel canto lower notes, you know. Mm-hmm. Whereas this idea of this Fach is much more forward placement and bright, you know.
Definitely a more Germanic sound than you're going to get in every Susanna, but that recording with Gundula Janowitz is just glorious. It's like that. It's that eternal balancing act of like some of the singing on those old mid-century Mozart albums are really fantastic, but the style is so off that they can be challenging to really listen to all the way through. Yeah.
Well, you had more to say about the Met season. There was some data that you pulled.
Yeah, there's some interesting data points about what's going on at the Met. They enlisted the Boston Consulting Group for their season, and you can really see that their fingerprints on this like pretty clearly in a couple of different ways. Number one is that the percentage of the season taken up by revivals has gone up from 71% in this season to 79%, and a huge portion of those are Traviata, Boheme, Turandot, Madame Butterfly. None of the new operas have more than 10 performances, and many, and Traviata alone has 21 performances.
Hmm.
The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay is going to be the opening night performance, but other than that, but it's not getting a Met live in HD. The only new opera that is going to get one of those is the Frida Kahlo and Diego, the last dream of Frida and Diego. It is interesting that 2 of the new productions this year are Bellini operas after there's been a lot less bel canto at the house recently. Maybe that has something to do with the fact that Yannick Nézet-Séguin isn't going to be there quite as much this year. And there's going to be a lot of appearances by
Lisette Oropesa.
I mean, fantastic cast lists of these pieces. But this is a pretty conservative planning. I will say, like, Rachel Willis-Orison and Arabella has my eyebrows up. A revival of Andrea Chenier, an opera I've never heard live. I wouldn't call it like my favorite opera in the entire world, but it would be. But that duet, like, it goes pretty hard.
The Andrea Chenier duet?
Yeah, the one at the finale of Andrea Chenier, and of course Lisa Davidson and Tristan and Isolde.
Who's in the cast of Sonambula? I didn't get a chance to read that. Do you know?
Nadine Sierra.
Okay, that makes sense.
Javier Anduaga.
Yeah, but Nadine Sierra, like, has chords of steel right now, and like, if you watch any of her performances, she just, if she doesn't have a good conductor, I find it goes too far. Like, she's just. So I would be curious to see how that is shaped, because that's a very challenging role, but I'm sure she's going to do great. I'm surprised that they're still announcing Lisa Davidson as Isolde. I'm going to bet that she might back out of that, because who knows what her life's going to be like, after she has a kid, and like if she's going to be able to recover that fast and do like
if
the
she's
going to
want to come back to America while we're currently on fire.
Yeah. I bumped into a conductor who's affiliated with Chicago, and I'll leave it there, recently. And she's questioning whether or not she's going to continue her work in Chicago or just try to find work elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
I meant to say they, not she.
The other big change where you can really see the impact of this consulting group is that one of the hallmarks of the Met season compared to the other opera companies in the United States is that they often will have split runs of their productions where it will where like Boheme will come in and out of the repertory 2 or 3 times over the course of the season. Yeah. And with all of these performances of Traviata, like, they're not doing that anymore. They're spacing them out. And even though they're going to continue to have multiple casts, those are going to be during the same run of the show so that they can have like 2 Traviatas in a row. And that seems like it's I don't know that it's necessarily as much of a slam dunk as it seems like consultantees would have you think it was, because how many Traviatas do people really need to see in the same like 6 to 8 week span? Yeah. Even in New York.
Well, I personally would rather watch Lincoln and the Bardo than the Berezovsky Magic Flute. I'm not sure if that show still has legs, but it's nevertheless being presented in LA.
It is still slated for the Mets next season. So its official premiere is tentatively October of 2026. But they're saying
Lincoln and the Bardo, not the Magic
Lincoln
Flute.
and the Bardo, not Magic Flute. Yes. No, famously no one in Magic Flute has legs because they're all behind a projection screen.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the Kennedy Center. It's just,
do we have to? Why are you?
No, we really
do
don't. We gave all those stories that are the fallout from last week. And now it's going to be, there's other groups that have canceled their performances that would fit into, diverse or inclusive programming.
It's just so stupid is what I can't get over. Like, what an insane waste of time and talent and resources and playing with the careers of people who have devoted their lives to various art forms, and we're getting we're supposed to be getting the opportunity to perform at that great stage that's being ripped away from them for just to score cheap political points. And my greatest fear, I hope that we don't have any Republican mega donors listening to this podcast, although I don't really imagine that they would be able to stand some of our takes on things. So we're probably in the clear there. But my biggest fear is that they're going to get all of this press, and then they're going to have like Rupert Murdoch make a $200 million donation to the Kennedy Center in order to curry favor, and then they'll be able to claim that they actually saved the art. And we really are in the age of the golden age of art and culture instead of the age of dishonor.
National Symphony Orchestra rolled out a album from Carlos Simon, I think composer in residence Carlos Simon, last year, and it was one of the most clever rollouts of an album. They released each work as an EP before releasing the full album, and they were all commissions for the for the National Symphony Orchestra. So new works, and it's a really great collection, and Janae Bridges is on it. One of those pieces. And it's like, I remember just like thinking about all the albums I heard in 2024, and it stuck with me just because of the way they did it and how, for lack of a better word, how diverse and how inclusive it was. I doubt Carlos Simon will get any more commissions going forward.
Doesn't seem that way, but great news for friend of the show, Karen Slack. We love to see that. Grammy winner.
Yeah.
Don't you know?
Yeah. And the wrestling thing is, I remember when I was, in the 80s, I was in my adolescent time, and I remember just really enjoying watching guys in those costumes. Singlets. Yeah. I think, though, that they must have had extra, like, padding to cover VPL. Because now that I think about it, I never saw VPL. And now it's...
Or they were just wearing dance belts all along to go with their fight choreography.
All right, let's wrap the show up.
Good call, bad call on Opera Box Score.
Good call, bad call. That's how we end every show. I had a chance to interview Yeson Davis, one of my artists to continue to pay attention to in 2025. He is making his debut with Music of the Baroque in one of his signature roles, Didymus, in Handel's Theodora, in the first weekend of March. So if you're in Chicago, check that out. And if you're near a radio this Saturday or near your computer, tune in at 4:00 to WFMT to hear my conversation with Yeson Davis. Matt.
We had a pretty long drill, so we didn't include this story, but I do want to encourage you all to check out a really interesting piece from Joshua Barone in the New York Times about why mid-century American opera doesn't seem to be getting much love at the nation's premier opera institution, the Metropolitan Opera. It's focused a lot around Samuel Barber's Vanessa, which we've talked about on the show before, and has a really fascinating history that involves Maria Callas not wanting to sing in English or music that doesn't have any melodies in it. Her words, not mine. But my favorite part of this take, I will say, is that it doesn't attempt to make any apologies for how bad the Tenderland is and just focuses on the good American operas from that age. So thank you for not lying to us, Joshua.
That's it for this week's edition of America's Talk Radio Show about opera. Make sure you subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts, get your voice heard, and find links to stuff we've talked about at the website operaboxscore.com. And that's where you can put your money where our mouths are. Give back to the OBS using the Support the Team tab. Your announcer is Norm Woodell. Your creative consultant is me, Oliver Camacho. The audio editor is Weston Williams, and the executive producer is George Cedarquist. For my co-host Matt Cummings, with guests Pene Pati and Meridian Prall, I'm asking you to continue the conversation about opera, particularly opera set at the beginning of the 1980s wrestling boom. We're back with an all-new show next week. You'll get more opera headlines, more hot takes, and more warring mafia families join us.